I think everyone can agree that FlyQuest is really overperforming at Worlds 2024 this year. They are heavily outperforming expectations, and it's great to see. Heading into the tournament, I really wasn't expecting much from this team, and I think a lot of people were expecting more from Team Liquid heading into Worlds. But FlyQuest is proving everyone wrong and saying that they are really a top tier team in the world, as they were able to challenge HLE really well today. So we're going to take a look at the draft real quick from Game 2. Which obviously had the really spicy pick from FlyQuest. If you didn't get to see the game, we'll run into it here soon. So HLE go ahead and first pick Renekton, which is, pretty standard at this point. I'm not a huge fan of it, but most people think it's pretty strong, so they're going to go ahead and place high priority on that. And FlyQuest go ahead and do a pretty solid thing here. Employ basic drafting strategy of countering what enemy just picked and picking the next OP. They go ahead and counter top lane directly with Olaf into Renekton. This is a very winning Olaf favored matchup pretty much in every stage of the game, so not a bad pick there. And then they go and take Kalista for Masu. It's not what I would prioritize, but obviously they have high priority on it for Masu. He seems to be comfortable on it, and it's a very high priority pick right now in the meta, so that's a good rotation from FlyQuest to open the draft. HLE then go ahead and 2-3 Zyra and Ezreal. This is very good. I think it scales very well. Zyra's obviously still really good, even though a lot of those fast farming AP junglers have fallen off, like the Brand and the Lilia. Zyra's still very premier in the meta, and obviously Ezreal's always just a good standby, as he's very difficult to play against, high mobility, and obviously great DPS, great long range and scaling. And then FlyQuest go ahead and round out first phase with Leona. This is pretty interesting to me. That they picked Leona into Ezreal rather, and they blind pick support. I would have just picked jungle here on R3. I don't really think there's a reason not to, especially since a lot of teams on red side particularly are saving support for R5 counter to ensure a solid matchup there. But it's not like the Leona's bad, it's just difficult to play into the Ezreal, I think. Leona is, however, in my opinion, the best tank engage support available, so it's not really a bad pick. Kalista Leona is also a pretty strong lane combo. So through the first phase, I'd say it's a pretty even draft. Both teams have strengths and weaknesses. I think Fly has pretty solid lane states to play around, and winning bot lane and winning top lane matchup, so it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of the draft plays out. Now obviously the R4 super hype surprise pick of this draft was Nunu and Willem for FlyQuest, more specifically for Inspired in the jungle. This is awesome. I really love it, and I've been waiting for creativity in the jungle meta for so long, really in the meta in general. So many teams are just stuck in the typical group of champions that they play and are comfortable on and don't really want to expand outside of that. But Inspired here is pulling out the Nunu, and I love it. And what I love even more is that it was really successful and that they won the game on it. So many times when we see a new character picked and it loses the game, they're like, oh yeah, it must not be very good, and it just goes right back in the dumpster and is never picked again. But I'm really glad that Inspired had success on this pick. Obviously, they got off to a pretty rough start, but FlyQuest played really well in the mid and late game team fights. Decision making was pretty on point, and I think Nunu was a large part of that because his pressure on objectives is so big. He can basically guarantee any dragon or any baron in the later stages of the game. So I really love the pick. I think Nunu's actually really strong right now because of that objective control that he offers, and it's also a solid matchup into Zyra because he can somewhat match the clear speed, and he also scales pretty solidly as a frontliner in the jungle. HLE go and round out with Poppy and Yasuo. This is really strange to me. The Poppy is obviously good into Kalista and Leona, so that's a pretty solid direct counter there. But I'm just really confused by the Yasuo. It's not really it doesn't fit in this comp very well. They don't have any knockups to really play around for the Yasuo. And this HLE comp just seems kind of all over the place, like it's not really achieving anything specific. But the R5 Hui for FlyQuest is very nice, even though it's going to struggle in the early lane against Yasuo, and there's a lot of counterplay available with the wind wall this game. Hui is obviously very good, scales really well, has really long range, and plays team fights very strong in the late game. So I think that FlyQuest has a much better, much more standard comp, is going to be able to play team fights out much better in the late game. So really glad to see Inspired pull out the really spicy Nunu pick, and really glad to see FlyQuest pull out the win in Game 2 and challenge HLE in this best of 3. Very nice to see from FlyQuest. Thanks for watching, see you next time.